Written by internationally best-selling and award-winning author Carol Goodman, The Night Visitors is a genre-bending thriller, and it shines a spotlight on abusive relationships and family trauma. And as I was saying at the beginning of the show, it kept me up all night in one sitting. I had to read the entire book. It's that good, and really tackles those subjects, and at the same time keeps you all like, oh, I want to know what happens next. It's got mystery, so it's just got everything in it, and also just talks about moving forward in life and getting past, life's obstacles. So very excited to have Carol join us here on today's Big Blend Radio Champagne Sunday show. Her book is out everywhere. Go get it now, Amazon, Goodreads, all those places. But always go to the author's website, carolgoodman.com. Welcome, Carol. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Lisa and Nancy. Thanks for having me on. Glad to be here.
We're excited to have you on the show, and thank you for waiting, because our champagne toast got lengthy today.
Oh, it's fun.
hey, the more you got to toast, the better.
Champagne. Yes, I wanted to have some champagne while listening, but that's it was fun. I like that you. I hope I'm a birthday celebration someday.
Oh, yeah. Well,
cool.
Send it in. Keep us posted.
Okay.
We always love to celebrate everyone's birthdays.
We like long toasts because we get to have a little more.
And we get to toast you for the release of The Night Visitors. So this is 20 books?
Thank you.
Am I right on that?
Wow.
This is the 21st, yes. If
you get a Magnum champagne for that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So now you're based in New York State, right, where the book is set?
Yes, I'm in the Hudson Valley, just about 2 hours north of New York City, and The Night Visitors is set in the Catskills, just across the river from me.
Ooh. Well, it sounded so beautiful out there, reading, and part of that was I was just intrigued by the landscape, because it also is a big part of the book. It was the landscape, the village, the towns, the people. Do you do a lot of people watching by any chance?
All the time, yes. I love taking trains and listening in on people, and yes, I'm always looking for new material and watching people.
Yeah, because your characters, you get people, like, as soon as you meet them, you go, okay, I got that person, and then you go, well, maybe not. I mean, the main characters. You kept me guessing quite a bit on that. And do you want to give everyone an overview of The Night Visitors before I don't want to spill the beans. Like,
okay, I'll try not to spill too many beans either. So it starts out with a woman named Alice and a young boy named Orrin. They're heading into the Catskills on a snowy night on a bus, and we know they're fleeing from something. We're not sure what yet. But they are looking for someplace safe, and they make a call to a hotline call center, a crisis center that sets them up with a domestic violence shelter. And so they take the bus to this little town, Delphi, and they're supposed to be picked up there by somebody from the call center. But as we hear first Alice, and then we are introduced to Maddie, the woman who picks up the call and goes out to get them, we have a sense that maybe something is not, Alice is not being completely truthful about everything that's going on. And Maddie, when we see her in her house, old farmhouse in the Catskills, something is going on in that house too that we're not sure about yet. And the little boy Orrin, he convinces Maddie, instead of taking them to the shelter, he convinces her to take them home with her by saying, it's snowing. You don't want to drive to the shelter. Your home is quicker. And when Maddie agrees to that, even though she's not supposed to do it, but then she wonders, how did Orrin know that her house was closer than the shelter? So there's something going on even with Orrin.
Yeah, okay, because there was some like paranormal-like things going on, and there was I'm going, man, this, you know what I mean? It. Would you say paranormal? It's just kind of that. I'm going, okay, there's interesting.
Extra.
I did not expect that, and I'm like, no way. And then Orrin to me was this little genius kid, like, who could see, that, I mean, would you see?
Yeah,
well,
he
has nice
he's
visitors.
Also like, Yeah, he does have night visitors, and he has. He's also a Star Trek fan, and not Star Trek, Star Wars. Excuse me, my stepdaughter somewhere is shivering because she's a big Star Wars fan, and he's into Greek mythology and constellations and the stars. So he's one of those kids that's so bright that you just he blows you away, and you almost feel like he's got some. He's an old soul. He's got some connection. He's listening into some radio signal that you don't hear.
Yeah, he's so. You want to meet him. You want to hang out with him. That I really enjoyed his character in this, and then the special relationships. He has these special relationships with people, and to me he's like the glue of the story. He's like who gets everyone together.
Yeah, because Maddie, when Maddie picks up this woman and the son, she wants to help them, but she has long experience. She's worked at this hotline, this crisis hotline, and at domestic violence shelters and homeless shelters, and she's a social worker. She's experienced with all sorts of people, and she has some suspicions about the story Alice tells her, but she's completely drawn in by Orrin. She is willing to break all the rules because there's something really special about him.
I think when people are going through a lot of drama and trauma, that the truth gets hidden just out of embarrassment or not sure what words to use that will let the other person understand what's really going on. I mean, family drama is pretty horrific at times. Can be.
Right, and that's such a good observation because it's not always when someone isn't telling us everything, sometimes it's because they're ashamed, and there's so much shame surrounding domestic violence that people don't even really they're used to being hiding and keeping secrets for so long that it takes a lot for them to trust and to tell the truth.
And from all sides, and that's the thing too. You have all the people in the book that are also on the caregiver side and the helper side, and they've been through something themselves. And I think sometimes that's where people end up in that field because they've seen it or they've experienced it or have someone that they know that's experienced it. I don't think any of us can say we've never been touched by that in some way.
I don't know that we have, and it's true that when I did the research for this book, I worked for a hotline and met all these people who do this work. And first of all, they're outstanding. It's just amazing, the generosity that there are these people who give so much of their time and energy and selves. But very often once you got to know them, there was something in their background, something that led them to want to do this kind of work, that they had experienced this and their way of giving back. Somebody had helped them at some point, and their way of giving back was to work and give back to other people.
It's interesting because Alice and even Orrin at the beginning, he's pretty good, but Alice had that kind of like, oh, you're the frumpy social worker and this is how you do things, They were both kind of, fiery in temperament.
Right. So Alice says a lot of things. It's the point of view switches from Alice to Maddie, and in her point of view, her attitude towards the social work is not kind. It's very mistrustful, and we learn as we go on why. That her experiences have not always been great, and also I think you feel very vulnerable when you're in a position where you're having to ask for help. And it makes you feel like you're dependent on these people, and that can cause anger and resentment sometimes, to misdirect it towards a person who may just be probably is just trying to help you. But you're angry that you're in that circumstance, so that anger gets displaced onto the person.
Wow. And so what led you to even go and work in the call center and even, get into this topic? And because really it's like when you learn about things like that, you sometimes feel like, okay, we're going to learn this, and I want to tell everybody about this, and then it's almost like, preaching, you know what I mean? And I think the way you've brought this into the story is really eye-opening and you're in it. You're in the story as you're reading it. You're just like, ooh, this man. And then you realize, wow, I just learned stuff, So I think it's a really well done way of getting us to, open our eyes and learn more about this subject that people don't want to talk about. So what led you to it?
Well, it really, there was a specific moment where I thought about volunteering there, and it was, I had a student, I teach at the State University of New York in New Paltz, and I had a student come to me and say that she wanted an extension on a paper, which I get a lot of reasons for that, but this was, she came to me and told me that she had fled an abusive marriage, and she was, had come upstate with her 2 children and was just trying to make do. And, I felt so much for her that, well, first of all, I gave her the extension. And then I just felt like I wanted to, help her, and I felt really touched by her story. I had been in an abusive relationship years before and had gotten out and had been lucky enough to have family to go to. But I always thought, I've always been aware that so many women and so many children in those situations do not have family to go to. So I found out about this place, Family of Woodstock, which is an organization that runs a crisis hotline. They also run a domestic violence shelter, a homeless shelter, halfway houses for young people who are aging out of foster care. They just do everything. And I found out about them to tell her. And when I found out about it, too, I thought, I need to volunteer at a place like this because this has moved me so much, and I had been so frustrated at not knowing how to help her, and I thought I need to do this. But as with most times we have those thoughts, I thought I'm going to do this someday when I have time. And we're all busy, right? So that might have been, I don't know when that would have been, except 2016, the day after the election. I called them up and I just said I want to volunteer. I just felt like that was the moment where I wanted to do it. And they must have noticed something about my voice because they said, well, what are you doing right now? and so they had me come right on over to do a mailing, and I signed up for the 60-hour training for the crisis hotline.
Oh, wow.
And I did it that year. And at that point, I was also picturing Alice and Orrin on that bus heading towards the Catskills. It was like they were launched on that bus, and I was learning about what this place was that they were coming to. So by the time I wrote the book, I wrote most of it, about a third of it before I even did the training. And I was 2/3 done by the time I did my first shift on the crisis hotline. But I knew enough from that training that I was able to, use that as a background.
Did you feel like you needed to go and change anything?
Oh, I did. I think as like the second draft that I did, not a whole lot, because it doesn't take place in the shelter, the crisis hotline, and that center is kind of the background. They go to it once or twice, but it mostly happens at Maddie's house. As I found things out, I worried like that, Maddie completely breaks the rules because they tell in training, they're like, never bring the client home. That's like a first rule. But I was like, okay, but she's someone who breaks the rules. And I talked later, like a year later, by the time I told my coworkers that I had written this book and here it is. And by the way, this woman really breaks the rules. And they were like, yeah, but sometimes you have to break the rules. One of my trainers said to me just recently, she said, actually what we tell people is if they do break the rules, we always ask, well, what was your instinct that made you do that? And sometimes, the instinct was the right instinct. So I did change things as I went along, but I was also kind of glad to see that there were reasons. The instincts that led Maddie to do what she did were valid, and my coworker said, yeah, she did the right thing. So that was
when you're
fun.
dealing with people, I think you can't. I know we have to have rules, but man, when you're dealing with people, I just think they get stretched sometimes because they have to get stretched.
Well, I think it's interesting because that is, you cover that in the book, the breaking of the rules, and I think that's also in writing, isn't that? We go through that where this is what you're supposed to do, and then all of a sudden as a writer goes, Nah, scratch that. I'm doing it my way. I'm like, poetry is a good example of that. It's like, no,
Right.
I'm not capitalizing
Yeah.
anything. What are you going to do about it?
And there is that kind of thrill. That's a really good point. You do it in writing as well, especially if if you're writing a type of genre like mystery where there are expectations. And I know, and I can't tell you what it was because it would spoil it, but there was one point at which I think my readers are expecting me to do this. I'm going to do the absolute opposite of that. So sometimes just knowing what the rules are, the expectations, that helps. You just do the other thing. You do the thing that in the moment that as best you can is the right thing to do.
Wow. I did want to bring up, because you were talking about Family of Woodstock, that they have a shelter, but also a homeless shelter. And I think there's that underlying fear also was that you could go homeless over a situation. You make this chance of,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna bolt out of this situation, and then you realize that in 1-2 days of that you could end up homeless.
I think that is, the terrifying thing, and it's why so many people do stay in abusive relationships, and because they're taking a huge risk that they and their children may be about to become homeless. And that's why to have these shelters that take people in and that are protect them, they're places that are the location is never given out. My first day working at Family, I stupidly asked, I said, "Oh, where is the domestic violence shelter?" And the volunteer looked up at me and said, "That's a secret." I was like, "Oh, yes, of course it's a secret." But, that's, the thing that I've always thought of, that, when I had to leave a relationship like that, came home to my family, and but I knew at the time, I was like, what would I have done if I didn't have my family to come home to?
And they know where the family is sometimes, and then they stalk. I mean, I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
That's true.
And throughout life, we both, Nancy and I, have ended up in some form of something. Whether it's directed at us or a friend, and it's almost like a woman has to go like true couch hopping to almost places that are unexpected to the person. Especially the longer they know the friends, and that becomes scary for the friends. And so sometimes friends and family won't help just out of that fear. And love Oren being in this book and his character and his personality, because you make him strong, and I think it's a very difficult time for adults and kids to go through this and have that communication. I mean, what happens, if they still care about the abuser, and sometimes they're being abused and they don't tell. There's so many weird things that go on in this kind of situation. So I think the kids, that's just.
I think you can carry some guilt that because I think an abuser makes you feel that you caused this. Like, look what you made me do to you. That thing comes up. Yeah, no, that's
gross.
Exactly.
But it's true. They do that.
They do, absolutely. It's that's exactly the language that's used to look what you made me do. And I think people carry that with them for their whole lives, and that's one of the things I tried to get at in the book is how do you ever let that go, as you alluded to when you were describing the book, which I was so glad that you mentioned that, because there's a cycle of abuse that goes on, and that guilt and feeling of responsibility can last a whole lifetime. And sadly, sometimes those people grow up and become abusers because they've never resolved that. So I really wanted to think about, how do you break that cycle? How do we ever get past that? And I think the answer is that, or one answer is that, you need, if powerful people to come into your lives who, give you love and help you to trust again, and also to face that this was not your fault, help you to see that it was not your fault that this happened to you.
And it's hard because they get stuck in because you've been,
Yeah.
it's not always the physical abuse, it's the mental abuse and the emotional abuse that really does it.
I don't think there's physical abuse
without the
mental.
emotional and the I think
it's all the same, because I think it's all the same. But I think you can, if you're in that situation, you can resolve to do exactly the opposite of the person who's abusing you.
And you never know how far they're going to go. You think, you know what I mean? It just seems to always progress worse and worse. The one thing too about Oren's character, which I thought was neat, is, so many kids will turn to something else for strength, and if they don't, that's where it really gets scary, right? Because then it starts going bad. But his whole thing about Star Wars, and I thought of him yesterday. May the Fourth be with you day.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wish we had our show yesterday with you.
Exactly, that's right. My stepdaughter, again, who's really big into Star Wars, sent out tweets for the May the Fourth be with you. That would have been perfect. But it is Cinco de Mayo is good too. But that's absolutely that he turns to. I think we all need like some, kind of distraction like that, or something where we could to survive those difficult times. We need love and support, but we also need for our minds. That's why reading is so important to me, and for me it's also been writing, that I can take what's going on, that's bad going on in my life, and I can do something productive with it. So I can imagine another kind of story, and so Oren plays out these stories of betrayals and a father-son relationship, that happens in Star Wars. I don't know if I can spoil that. I think most people know that secret.
Yes.
But so he's working that out. Like, what do you do if your father is also a villain? And is there still some piece of humanity there? So he's using all of that, all the mythical archetypes of Star Wars, to sort of figure that out, and also to give himself like a place to escape to.
There's a magical quality to your book. Even you're covering these topics, but there's like magic in it. There's like little sprinkles of magic, and I'm like, this is like, how do you put it all in one and make it work like that? It's amazing to me, the writing of that, because there's just like these little, all of a sudden you're reading like sprinkle, sprinkle, and you're like, wow, where did that come? Wow, that's cool. It makes you feel good. But having that, when you got into the constellations and things, that to me again is also looking at how big the universe is, like never ending, right? It's that there's something far bigger to work towards. Whereas it's humbling, but at the same time, you feel it's tiny when you look at the sky. It's like, dang, look at that. But it makes you also look into the future and how big it is, and how you can reach for the stars. So I think there's a lot of positivity in your book. I mean, a lot of it in there. Just the balance is incredible.
I hope so. Yeah, thank you. That certainly was my intention too. And it was hard at times, as I sort of dug my characters into their predicament deeper. I had to think like, well, what's going? How do I save them now? How do they ever climb out of
what
this?
did I just do to them?
Yeah. What did I do? Yeah, I know. I often feel that way, that I've written them into a very difficult place, and I really want them to. I don't want to cheat to get them out of there. I want them to, through their own strengths to, find a way out, but they don't do it alone. They do it, it's these people who are able to come together, and to help each other. And I think that's, really what we have to do is help each other. And often in the act of helping somebody else, you've managed to help yourself. So that realization we are not alone, that we're all connected, I think is a big piece of moving forward, and knowing this is not always just going to be like this. I'm not trapped in this little situation. There's this whole other big world, and there are people out there who can help me, who I can help, and that I can be bigger.
Oh, I love that. And action is the antidote to despair. And that's my favorite quote. Joan Baez said that. And that just when you read books like this and you talk about like right after the election, okay, I want to go volunteer. I'm like, dude, me too. I felt like I had to do something too.
I needed to do something. I spent the day like just pasting on these little plastic circles on newsletters because I couldn't do anything else. I didn't have the training, but I felt better. I felt like I just need to do something, and I think it does make us, when we feel that despair, that if there's something we can do, that helps us, and it helps all the people around us.
There's some sayings, old sayings, that are really kind of negative, and unfortunately, if you grow up with them, they ring in your head sometimes. Like, better the devil you know than the one you don't. When I think of this situation, like if you're in an abusive situation, that saying can keep you there.
Yeah,
it's a really bad.
That's like a very.
That's really a bad
cruddy way to live, man, because you're supposed to live and live out loud and have a good life,
Yeah.
Who knows what happens?
Yeah.
I know there's all the religious beliefs and everything, and everyone, no disrespect, but I think we should be doing as much as we can while we're here to enjoy it and give back to it. It's like that cycle, right? So just keep going forward with that.
And you deserve a full life and a free life, and everyone deserves that. So that is. I hadn't thought of that. That there are just harmful messages, I think, like that in our
just wonder
culture.
where that came from.
It is kind of a negative little. Because if you play it out in the, it is, and and that's why people stay in terrible situations, and then people will say to them, like, well, why don't you just leave, without thinking about the everything, and then it becomes almost like they're complicit in the situation they're in, because they're afraid to leave. But it takes a lot of courage to do that, and we don't always, not everyone is standing with open arms trying to help. There's still so much stigma. People are blamed for, you must have done something to bring that on, or how could you have been so dumb to pick that person. I think there's always like that negative loop that can run through our heads, and I'm always, for myself, trying to replace it with tell a better story, even just for myself. Let me tell a better story for myself.
Oh, I like that.
I try to, because if you change the story, it's so we can, one of my students just wrote a short story recently in which it was the voice of depression was this like creature that was stalking her, and it was like, it would say all the bad things to her that we say to ourselves when we succumb to depression. And it's, it's all, we all know what that sounds like, and we can succumb to that. So I always try to, when I hear those things, I try to just say, like, I don't care whether that's true or not. It's not going to move me forward. And so if it's a thought that is not going to move me forward, then I try to reject it as much as I can.
Oh, I like that. It's true. Very positive. You get a champagne toast for that. You're getting a lot of them today. We're just giving champagne away. Come on our show. We're just giving it away by the glasses, for you. But you still, for this 21, you get a big Magnum. But now what's next? Like, now I'm hooked in now, and I have to go backwards and read the other books. But I want to know what's next.
Yeah, there are 20 books you can go back and read.
Cool.
The next one is called The Sea of Lost Girls, and this is my first time using that as a new title for it, and that'll come out next year, March probably 2020. And it kind of came off of, after writing The Night Visitors, I realized there were some elements that I still was interested in. I changed the setting to a boarding school on the coast of Maine, because I had spent some time up there, and I was just wowed by how beautiful it was. And it has to do with a mother who gets a phone call late at night from her son, and he wants her to come pick him up. And we've all gotten those calls. And she goes to pick him up, and his sweatshirt is soaked. He's like there by the sea. And the next morning they find out that his girlfriend was found dead underneath this cliff. So she has to wrestle with she has to wrestle with whether she believes her son, if she thinks he had anything to do with it, and a lot of secrets from her past that have come back to haunt her. So it deals with a lot of those kind of difficult issues. But it also has beautiful Maine scenery.
Yeah, I was just thinking,
I try to.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like you were saying she's dead and she's under a cliff, and I'm like thinking of Maine, and we haven't been there yet, but we will get there. And you know, from whatever I've seen of Maine, it's those big craggy cliffs, and you know, it's like the Sea of Dover, or what, you know, I feel like we're in England or Scotland or something. And so when you said that, I was like, okay, this is going to get like dramatic. This is drama.
Yes, and there's a lot of fog up there. Yeah, I spent a couple weeks up there over the last few summers, and I'm going up this. I'm going to go do the revision of the book this summer at a writers' colony on an island off the coast of Maine. So there may be more Maine books in my future.
Cool.
But there could be like something,
Sea of Lost Girls
happens in the writers' group.
Yeah, I like that. Oh, yeah.
Somebody else's writing.
Mr. Peacock comes out of the with a candlestick. Yeah, I like that.
I am kind of thinking in that way. But the poor fellow people at this retreat have no idea what's in store for them, because I will probably show up with plans to plot their murders.
Oh, nice.
Oh, cool. Like you can like make it so somebody you make a murder up in writing, or so you do the murder so that you can write it.
See, nice. See,
thanks,
research
Nancy.
is always cool. The research is the best part of the writing thing. Then you have to write it, and it's like, what? But it's there, you know, it sits there, and it's like like having another person in your body. I think when you write, there's like somebody else in there, and they come and visit all the time. You know,
well,
just adding that paranormal.
Well, that's spooky.
Yeah, you know, it's like Ghost. You know, she goes in and out with the.
You should write mother-daughter mystery novels. Apparently.
Ooh,
oh, cool.
Well, that'd be fun.
Oh, you know what? We could do it with a tour. Like, you know, we go to a hotel and it's
with your
haunted
tour,
or not.
all these hotels. Yeah.
I have to say, sometimes we can, especially in Las Vegas, for some reason, people watch and make up a whole story about. They'll be sitting having coffee, and by the time we're done with them, they've done a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, they're like part of Charles Manson's gang or something like that. But Carol, it is time to ask you, what is your champagne toast today? What are you happy about?
Well, I'm happy to be on the talking to you women today. But my champagne toast is to the people of Family of Woodstock, the organization, the Crisis Center, and everything they do. And they've been so warm and welcoming. When they found out that I had written a book about them, they weren't angry. They were nice about it, and they've been really supportive. So this is to Family of Woodstock.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Such a good conversation, such an awesome book.
What fun.
Yeah, please come back. Get more books out there fast. But I've got 20 to go through, so I'm happy. I'm always happy about that.
Well,
you find a new favorite author, and then it's like you don't have to wait 10 years for another book. It's like, yay, there's a backlog. This is cool.
There is a whole backlist, yes. Well, thank you so much. It was great talking to both of you. What a great mother-daughter team. It made me feel, I'll call up my daughter right after this and say, we need to hit the road.
Champagne toast to you and your daughter.
May the fourth be with you.
Yeah, may the fourth be with you, and may a really good bottle of champagne be with you, too. We have a song for you. We love to match songs for our guests, and your song today has to be Witness. It's called Witness Protection, and it's off the album called Holy Water by Allison August, an incredible blues singer-songwriter. And everyone, you can keep up with Allison at AllisonAugust.com. She's got 2 L's in that, Allison. But of course, go get Carol Goodman's book, The Night Visitors. Go to her website, carolgoodman.com, so you can see the backlog too. All right. And listen, we want the chili recipe from inside the book. Okay, just saying. I want the chili recipe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. I'll put that on the website. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Okay. Bye.
I know you're creeping up behind me. I feel you breathing down my neck. Didn't take long for you to find me. You're like a monkey on my back. You know I sleep with one eye open and my ear to the ground. May not help, but I'm hoping to be long gone when you come around. under the ground.